The camera fades in. A quiet hum fills the air, the kind of silence before a storm. Then, a voice cuts through. What if the royal baby never existed? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That's not a question anyone in Britain ever expected to hear. But tonight, everything you thought you knew about the birth of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor, the child once celebrated as the symbol of a new royal generation, is about to be turned inside out. Because according to explosive new revelations from Lady Colin Campbell, the British aristocrat and royal biographer who's never been afraid to tell the truth, there may never have been a royal birth at all. Leaked hospital staff emails, missing patient records, a palace shrouded in silence, and a woman, Meghan Markle, whose carefully crafted royal fairy tale may be hiding the biggest secret of her life. Picture this. It's early May 2019. The entire world's eyes are glued to Windsor. The royal press corps has been camped outside the hospital for days, waiting for the first cry of a newborn royal. Reporters check their phones every minute, refreshing for any sign from Buckingham Palace. Yet inside the usual maternity ward, where royal births are traditionally recorded with precision, from Princess Diana to Kate Middleton, something strange is happening. Nothing. No cars. No press briefings. No official confirmation from the medical staff. Just silence. And when the palace finally breaks that silence, it's already too late. The story makes no sense. The timeline doesn't add up. One moment Meghan is in labor. The next, the baby is already born. And hours later, she appears on camera, glowing, smiling, walking in heels, holding a child that few people, not even seasoned royal reporters, can confirm ever came from her. That was the first red flag. But no one dared say it out loud. Fast forward to today. Lady Colin Campbell, the same woman who once exposed royal affairs long before the tabloids dared touch them, steps into the spotlight again, and she's furious. Furious because she says she's been holding on to proof, the kind of proof that no one inside the palace wants to touch. Screenshots of internal hospital emails. Communications from the day Meghan claimed to have given birth to Archie. And in those communications, something chilling. No record of any patient under the name Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, or any variation of it. Not one nurse. Not one obstetrician. Not one midwife who can confirm she was ever there. So what does that mean? Could a global institution as powerful as the British monarchy really have staged a royal birth? Could a woman as media-savvy as Meghan Markle have pulled off the most elaborate motherhood illusion in modern history? Lady C insists the answer is yes. And as the evidence begins to pile up, it's not just the tabloids whispering anymore. People inside the palace are starting to talk. But before we get to that, before we look at those leaked hospital emails and the questions that could shatter the royal narrative forever, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the day that changed everything. May 6th, 2019. A morning like no other. Buckingham Palace releases a statement just after 2 p.m. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex has safely delivered a son. Yet just a few hours earlier, a very different message had been sent out. The Duchess is in labor. Within minutes, confusion spreads across the global press. Reporters rush to figure out which hospital she's at. The media storms the Lindo wing at St. Mary's, the same hospital where Diana and Kate gave birth. Nothing. No motorcade. No press officers. No security detail. Not even a hint of royal protocol. The hospital confirms. No Duchess of Sussex listed. No high-security delivery scheduled. If that seems strange, it's because it is. For decades, royal births have followed an almost ceremonial routine. Tight-lipped but traceable. Every name, every admission, every attending physician verified, archived, and, eventually, released to the public. But in Meghan's case, the paper trail stops cold. No staff logs. No witness accounts. Not even a medical certificate made public. Instead, we get a photo op at Windsor Castle. Meghan in a white dress, standing beside Harry, holding a baby that's carefully swaddled. Face turned away, barely visible. It's magic, she tells the cameras. It's been a dream. But the dream begins to crack the moment Lady Colin Campbell steps forward. Because according to her, that day's hospital records tell a very different story. She says the screenshots she obtained, sent anonymously to her by someone claiming to work in a royal-linked medical system, show that Meghan Markle was never admitted to any known hospital under her legal or royal title. Not at St. Mary's, not at Frimley Park, not at Portland, not even under a pseudonym, a common security measure for high-profile mothers. In other words, the hospital logs for the day Archie was allegedly born are missing one of the most famous women in the world. Think about that for a second. A duchess, whose every step was tracked by international media, vanishes from the medical record on the day she supposedly gives birth. How is that possible? And even stranger, the palace refuses to clarify. When asked for official confirmation of where Meghan delivered, their statement is deliberately vague. Details of the birth are private. Private? Since when has a royal birth, one that determines the line of succession, been considered private? Lady Colin Campbell calls it the perfect storm of secrecy. She claims that in those emails, hospital staff are told not to respond to external inquiries regarding any high-profile deliveries scheduled for May 6th. But no name was ever attached. And that, she says, is the clue. Because if Meghan had truly given birth that day, there would have been a record, an attending physician, a discharge summary, a name on an admission list. And yet, according to Lady C, every trace has been wiped clean. Could it be that Meghan gave birth somewhere else? Or perhaps not at all? The questions spread like wildfire. Some speculate about a home birth. Others whisper about a U.S. surrogate. And still, the palace says nothing. In the weeks that followed, Lady C claimed she was approached by more than one insider. People who worked in or around royal protection units, who told her that Meghan's pregnancy never checked out. No consistent medical detail. No prenatal appointments at royal medical facilities. And above all, no credible witness who ever saw her in labor. Yet despite the inconsistencies, the world moved on. The tabloids printed the baby photos. The public celebrated. The illusion held. Until now, Lady C's newest interview reignited a story the palace thought was long buried. Her tone was measured, but her words hit like lightning. She said, "I am in possession of internal hospital communications from the very day in question, and I can confirm that no Duchess of Sussex was ever admitted. Not under her name, not under an alias. It's all smoke and mirrors." Those words, smoke and mirrors, are more than just an accusation. They are a declaration that the official royal narrative could collapse under the weight of its own deception. The shockwave was instant. Within hours, the clip of Lady C's statement went viral across social media. Millions began asking the question once deemed taboo. Was Meghan ever pregnant at all? But beyond the gossip, there's something deeper here, something that speaks to trust. If a royal institution, bound by centuries of tradition, can conceal the details of a child's birth, what else can it hide? And why now? Why would Lady Colin Campbell, after years of relative quiet, decide to expose this evidence? According to her, it's because she's sick of the lies. She says she's been pressured, even threatened, to keep silent. But when she realized how far the story had gone, with Netflix deals, brand launches, and public sympathy built on an alleged motherhood narrative, she decided enough was enough. Her words, "If the foundation of her public persona is false, then the people deserve to know." And she isn't just speaking metaphorically. The screenshots she shared allegedly show internal emails between hospital administrators discussing patient rosters, and one line stands out. "There is no royal patient booked or admitted for maternity care under any alias." If that's authentic, it's damning. It suggests that either the palace bypassed hospital protocol entirely, staging a delivery off record, or that Meghan never needed one. Either option is scandalous, and the implications stretch far beyond tabloid intrigue. Because if Meghan didn't give birth to Archie, that means the royal line of succession, already a fragile subject, could face an unprecedented legitimacy crisis. But before jumping to conclusions, there's one crucial question. Who leaked those emails to Lady C? She says the sender used an encrypted account, with metadata linking back to a private device near Berkshire, close enough to Windsor to raise eyebrows. She won't reveal more, only calling them someone who knows the system from within. And she swears on her title that the screenshots are real. Whether the public believes her or not, one thing is clear. Lady Colin Campbell has lit a match under the palace gates. And there's no putting out that fire. Because for the first time since 2019, journalists, investigators, and even former royal aides are revisiting every inconsistency, every blurred photo, every timeline gap, every suspiciously rehearsed statement, and asking if the royal baby story was just that, a story. Maybe Meghan never meant for the truth to stay hidden forever. Maybe she believed the world would forget. But one thing about secrets, they always come back when the lights are brightest. And now, the spotlight's back on her. So what happens next? What do these leaked hospital emails really reveal? And what about the missing medical records, the doctors who never appeared, and the birth announcement that defied royal tradition? Lady Colin Campbell promises she has more. And what she says next? About the palace's reaction, about the night of the birth, about the silence that followed, could turn this royal fairy tale into a scandal the monarchy may never recover from. Because, as she warns, the evidence doesn't lie. But people do. And if she's right, the truth about Archie's birth, or his very existence, is about to explode. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The question hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. If Meghan Markle was never admitted to any hospital, what exactly happened on the day the palace claimed she gave birth? That's where the real story begins, the day the palace went silent. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days in royal history. The media had been briefed to expect the traditional photo outside the hospital. The floral tributes had already started piling up outside Windsor. British tabloids had pre-written headlines. A new prince is born, ready to print at a moment's notice. The entire nation was on standby. And then, nothing. No flashing cameras. No royal motorcade. No press secretary emerging with that familiar smile. The news channels kept looping the same stock footage, desperately stalling for time. "We're awaiting confirmation from Buckingham Palace," one anchor said nervously. "But we believe the Duchess may be in labor." Except she wasn't. Hours later, another update came through, but this time, it was different. The palace confirmed that the Duchess of Sussex had gone into labor earlier this morning. The world leaned forward, waiting for more. But before anyone could even blink, another message appeared. The Duchess has safely delivered a son. Wait, what? The same day? The same morning? Within hours? How could she have gone from early labor to post-delivery, and yet not a single camera, nurse, or witness had seen her enter or leave any hospital? That timeline didn't just raise eyebrows, it shattered logic. Let's rewind for a second. Every royal birth before this followed a precise, almost ceremonial pattern. Princess Diana gave birth to both William and Harry at St. Mary's Hospital. In full public view, cameras waiting outside, medical teams confirmed, royal cars seen entering and exiting. Kate Middleton followed the same path with all three of her children. The same hospital, same doctors, even the same step outside those historic doors to show the world the new royal baby. But Meghan and Harry broke the pattern. According to the palace, they wanted privacy. They wanted to do things differently, on their own terms. That might sound admirable, except royal tradition isn't about vanity. It's about accountability. Every royal birth must be witnessed, recorded, and verified to ensure legitimacy in the line of succession. And that's why what happened on May 6, 2019, was more than just unusual, it was unprecedented. No convoy left Frogmore Cottage that morning. No witnesses saw Meghan being transported under protection. Even the press corps stationed near possible hospital routes reported a dead zone. Not a single royal vehicle was seen heading toward any maternity facility in the Greater Windsor or London area. It was as if the birth happened in a vacuum. But here's where things take a darker turn. Several journalists, including longtime royal correspondents, later revealed that they had been told to stand down that morning. One source said, "We were told she was in labor, then immediately told not to come near the hospital." Then, out of nowhere, the palace says the baby's already here. Strange, right? And stranger still, the palace press office refused to specify which hospital Meghan had supposedly used. Instead, they issued a single, carefully worded statement that avoided every direct question. It was short, vague, and oddly impersonal. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex was safely delivered of a son at 5:26 a.m. No mention of doctors. No confirmation of the facility. Not even a note about Harry's presence during delivery. For royal watchers, that silence screamed louder than any announcement could. Behind the scenes, confusion erupted. The BBC's royal correspondent reportedly demanded clarification. The palace's response: "We'll provide details in due course." But those details never came. Meanwhile, photographers began digging. Some claimed to have checked St. Mary's, no record. Others phoned the Portland hospital, rumored to be the Sussex's choice. Still nothing. Then came a more chilling discovery. Not one hospital in the region reported any security lockdowns or royal protocols that morning, the kind of procedures always triggered when a royal is in labor. So where was she? Lady Colin Campbell would later claim she knew the answer, but at the time, the silence was deafening. To understand why this silence was so suspicious, you have to look at how tightly the palace controls the media narrative. Normally, nothing gets past their communication machine. Yet that day, the system broke down. The palace couldn't provide photos, couldn't name doctors, couldn't even agree on the timeline. And then came the announcement that truly baffled the public. The couple had chosen to present their child in a few days. Why? Every royal mother, exhausted and swollen from labor, has faced those cameras hours after giving birth, because it's tradition. But Meghan? She skipped it entirely. No hospital exit, no public greeting, just a vague promise that we'll see the baby soon. When she did finally appear 2 days later at Windsor Castle, something about the image felt off. Her face was radiant, yes. Her words were graceful, but her body language? Controlled, cautious, almost staged. And Harry stood beside her, visibly tense, eyes darting. "It's magic," Meghan said softly to the cameras. "I have the two best guys in the world." But as millions watched, questions began forming in the shadows. Where had she given birth? Why were there no official witnesses? And why had the palace avoided answering even the simplest questions, like the location of the delivery? By that afternoon, whispers began circulating online. Was there even a delivery at all? Let's pause for a moment. It's one thing for tabloids to speculate. It's another when insiders start talking. According to one former royal aide, who later spoke to an investigative journalist off-record, staff members inside the royal household were instructed not to discuss medical matters pertaining to the Duchess. The directive reportedly came from a senior communications officer, underlining confidentiality. But there was one problem. No one had confirmed any medical event had actually taken place. That gap between what the palace said and what could be verified is where the scandal began to grow. Even among hospital staff, rumors spread. Nurses whispered that a royal birth had been mentioned in passing, but no patient under royal security had ever arrived. Security personnel reportedly confirmed that no lockdown was initiated, something that's standard procedure for any member of the royal family giving birth. Still, the public was told to believe. The news cycle ran with it. "It's a boy," flashed across screens worldwide. Newspapers sold out overnight. And in every photograph of Harry and Meghan smiling, the truth, whatever it was, stayed hidden behind the perfectly folded white blanket. Now imagine being one of the few journalists who noticed the inconsistencies and dared to ask questions. You'd find doors closed, emails unanswered, a royal press office suddenly tight-lipped. Some journalists were reportedly blacklisted for pressing too hard. One writer claimed she received an anonymous warning, "Leave it alone. You won't get access again." So they did. For months, the silence held. Then, slowly, cracks appeared. Reports surfaced that the palace's timeline didn't match hospital records in any nearby facility. A few veteran royal correspondents quietly admitted that they never saw evidence of a hospital birth. Others began to recall odd details. Meghan's pregnancy bump appearing inconsistent in shape and size during her final weeks. Could it be lighting, camera angles, wardrobe? Maybe. But the timing of the silence, paired with the vanishing hospital record, started to look less like coincidence and more like a cover. And through it all, Lady Colin Campbell waited, watching, collecting. She would later claim that she knew something was wrong that very day. She'd seen royal scandals before, but this one, she said, was different. It wasn't just about image. It was about reality itself. Now, remember that moment. The moment the palace confirmed Archie's birth but refused to name the hospital? That wasn't just a minor omission. It was a calculated decision. Because by withholding that detail, the palace removed any point of verification. Without a hospital, there were no witnesses. Without witnesses, there was no proof. And without proof, there was only belief. That's how the myth began. But every myth eventually meets its moment of reckoning. And for Meghan Markle, that reckoning began not in the palace corridors or the tabloids, but in the inbox of one furious socialite with a long memory and even longer reach, Lady Colin Campbell. There's a certain electricity in Lady Colin Campbell's voice when she knows she's holding something dangerous. The kind of energy that makes you lean in a little closer, not because you trust her completely, but because you know she's about to say something no one else dares to say. That's exactly what happened the night she decided to speak. "Enough of the lies," she said. The words snapped through the room like a whip. Her voice didn't tremble. It rang with the quiet confidence of someone who's been in this game long enough to know when a story's about to explode. The interview wasn't supposed to go this way. At first, it was a polite chat about royal history, Meghan's public persona, and the Sussexes' ongoing feud with the palace. But halfway through, the host made a mistake, a small one. He asked Lady C if she believed there were still secrets the royal family was hiding about Meghan's past. That was all it took. Lady Colin Campbell leaned forward, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Secrets?" she repeated. "Oh, darling, you have no idea." The audience froze. Even the host seemed unsure whether to laugh or listen. But then she continued, voice lowering just enough to draw everyone in. "Let's just say there are documents, internal ones, that prove Meghan Markle never gave birth at all." You could have heard a pin drop. For a moment, the host tried to recover, to redirect the conversation. But Lady C wasn't backing down. She was tired of pretending, tired of the whispers, tired of watching the palace and the media treat the truth like a dangerous weapon to be locked away. And that's when she dropped the bombshell. Leaked hospital communications, screenshots she claimed were sent to her by an insider, confirming that no Duchess of Sussex, under any name or alias, was ever admitted for maternity care on May 6, 2019. No patient, no record, no birth. Think about the gravity of that claim. For years, the world celebrated the arrival of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor as the beginning of a new era for the monarchy, a symbol of progress, diversity, and modernity. Now, in one fiery sentence, Lady C was suggesting it might all be an illusion. But who exactly is Lady Colin Campbell? And why does her voice matter so much in this storm of royal deception? To understand that, we have to rewind decades. Born in Jamaica, Lady Colin Campbell, Georgie to those who know her, was no stranger to scandal. She married into aristocracy, then turned her proximity to power into a career uncovering the secrets of Britain's most untouchable institution, the royal family. Her 1992 biography, Diana in Private, shocked the world with revelations about Princess Diana's unhappy marriage years before Diana herself confirmed them. Back then, the palace dismissed her as sensational. Later, history proved her right. So when Lady C speaks, people listen, even when they don't want to. And now, years after the Diana revelations, she'd returned with something even more explosive. During her interview, she held nothing back. "I have seen evidence," she said. "I've held it in my hands." Screenshots of hospital correspondence, confirming there was no patient by that name, no duchess, no security lockdown, nothing. And these aren't rumors. These are official records. Her tone was matter of fact, calm, deadly serious. The host tried to interject. "You're saying the palace faked a royal birth?" But Lady C cut him off. "I'm saying what the evidence says. And the evidence says she wasn't there." A murmur rippled through the studio. The cameramen glanced at each other, unsure whether to keep rolling. But Lady C didn't blink. She explained how the documents came into her possession. A few months earlier, an encrypted message had arrived in her inbox from an anonymous sender claiming to work at a hospital closely connected to the royal network. The message contained attachments, internal emails between staff discussing inquiries from the palace about non-existent patient data. The emails were dated May 6, 2019, the same day Archie's birth was announced. One read, "Confirming again there are no records of a royal patient, admitted or booked, under any variation of name. Please advise press inquiry team accordingly." That one line, Lady C said, changed everything. The audience gasped when she described it. The host sat back, speechless. But Lady C wasn't done. She leaned forward again, voice sharp now. They wanted privacy, yes. But what they wanted most was control. And when the palace realized the story couldn't be verified, they chose to erase the trail rather than admit what really happened. The air in the room turned heavy. She continued, I'm not here to destroy anyone. But I won't sit by while the truth is buried. People deserve to know what really happened that morning. Then she said something even more chilling. Something that sent shockwaves across the internet once clips of her interview went viral. The source who sent me these emails, she said softly, was terrified. They said, if this gets traced back to me, I'll lose everything. That fear wasn't paranoia. Lady C claimed the sender's metadata showed the message originated within a restricted NHS network near Berkshire, close to the same region where the Sussexes were living at Frogmore Cottage. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. They'd hidden their IP, masked their identity, but left just enough breadcrumbs for Lady C to verify that the hospital was legitimate. Was it someone inside the medical staff? A royal liaison? An IT administrator tired of the lies? Lady C didn't say. I protect my sources, she declared. But I'll say this much. The person who sent those emails was in a position to know the truth. As the clip spread online, reactions were immediate and fierce. Supporters of Meghan accused Lady C of slander. But others, especially those who'd long suspected inconsistencies in Meghan's pregnancy story, saw it as vindication. Suddenly, old footage resurfaced. Videos of Meghan's public appearances where her baby bump seemed to shift, deflate, or bounce unnaturally. Tabloids began replaying the footage frame by frame, comparing it to Lady C's claims. The internet went wild with theories, dissecting every movement, every timeline, every photo. But Lady Colin Campbell remained calm amid the chaos. Let them argue, she said later in another segment. The truth doesn't fear questions. And while she refused to reveal the full contents of the emails, she did hint at what else they contained. It wasn't just one message, she teased. There were multiple communications sent among staff, discussing how to handle press inquiries. The palace was clearly monitoring the situation in real time. Think about that for a moment. If the palace was monitoring the hospital situation in real time, it means they knew something wasn't adding up. They knew reporters were checking hospitals. They knew journalists were looking for a record of Meghan's admission, and they knew there was none. And instead of clarifying, they stayed silent. Why? Because once the truth slipped out, that Meghan Markle had never been seen by hospital staff, the monarchy's credibility would crumble. Lady Colin Campbell said it plainly. The monarchy couldn't afford another Diana. They couldn't afford a scandal that big, so they closed ranks. But her anger wasn't just directed at Meghan. It was at the entire institution, the palace machinery, the PR teams, the royal courtiers who, she says, chose deception over duty. Her voice cracked for the first time as she said it. I loved this institution once. I defended it. But what they've done, what they've hidden, she trailed off, looking away. It's unforgivable. For a woman known for her iron composure, that brief flicker of emotion said everything. And then she dropped another detail no one expected. She claimed the person who sent her those emails wasn't acting alone. They weren't the only one, she said. Someone else reached out after, confirming parts of the message. They said, you're on the right track. But it goes deeper. Deeper how? According to Lady C, the second contact hinted at more than just missing hospital data. They suggested the palace had activated an internal communication blackout around Meghan's pregnancy months before Archie's birth. No documents, no medical access, no routine checks logged. It was as though the entire pregnancy had existed in rumor, not record. The host tried to press for specifics, but Lady C smiled, that knowing, dangerous smile she's famous for. All in good time, she said. But I'll tell you this, there's one name in those emails, one signature, that proves this wasn't an oversight. It was a cover-up. The audience erupted in nervous laughter, not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do. Lady Colin Campbell had just accused the palace of falsifying royal history on live television. And while the network scrambled to go to commercial break, the clip had already been clipped, shared, and uploaded across every social platform. Within an hour, it was trending worldwide. By morning, major news outlets had picked it up. Some called it sensationalism. Others demanded an inquiry. But one thing was certain, the silence surrounding Archie's birth had been broken, and Lady Colin Campbell had lit the fuse. Still, behind the public spectacle, one question kept echoing through the halls of both Windsor and Westminster. How much does Lady C really know? Because if what she's claiming is true, if she really has hospital emails proving Meghan was never admitted, then it's not just a scandal. It's treason to the image of the crown itself. And yet, despite the chaos, Lady C looked calm, almost serene, as though she knew exactly how far this was going to go. And maybe she did, because as she ended that interview, she gave one final warning, a quiet, haunting line that still lingers like smoke. "I won't be the only one to speak," she said. "There are others, and when they do, the monarchy will wish they'd told the truth first." The studio went silent again. The cameras cut, the lights dimmed, but outside, the story had already escaped. And somewhere deep inside the palace, someone was making a phone call, a call to stop the next leak before it was too late. But that call came too late, because what Lady C revealed next wasn't just about emails or missing records. It was about a chain of events, deliberate, orchestrated, that pointed straight to the very heart of the institution itself. And the next revelation she made would leave even her fiercest critics speechless, because the documents weren't just emails anymore. They were evidence, and evidence doesn't lie. But what that evidence showed next, that's where the story takes a darker turn no one saw coming. Imagine the feeling of opening an email that changes everything you thought you knew about the royal family. The soft ping of a new message, the casual glance at the screen, and then, in a single moment, the entire illusion begins to crumble. That's exactly what Lady Colin Campbell described when she opened the message that would shake the foundations of the palace. It was late, well past midnight. Her study in Castle Goring was quiet, except for the ticking of an antique clock and the distant hum of the Sussex coast. She wasn't expecting anything that night, maybe a few inquiries from publishers or messages from viewers reacting to her latest podcast episode. But then she saw it. A blank subject line, no sender name, only a timestamp. At first, she thought it was spam, but something about it. Maybe the way the sender's address looked slightly official, or the encrypted formatting of the attachments, caught her attention. She clicked, and that's when she saw it. The first line of the message was short, chilling, and unmistakable. "Lady C, you were right to doubt. Check the attachments. The truth is here." There were 4 attachments, all screenshots of internal communications from a hospital's administrative server. The emails were dated May 6, 2019, the same day Meghan Markle allegedly gave birth to Archie Harrison. The first email thread looked mundane enough. It was an internal discussion between midwives and administrators, confirming patient admissions for the early morning. There were several names, women giving birth that day, emergency C-sections, routine checkups. But none of them, not one, matched anything close to Meghan Markle, Rachel Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, or any code name known to be used by royal patients. Lady C scrolled further. The second screenshot was even more telling. It showed a message from a senior hospital coordinator addressed to the communications team. The subject line read, "Royal Press Inquiry, Urgent Verification." The body of the email read, "Please confirm if a patient under royal security protocols has been admitted today, May 6, 2019. External inquiry expected. Need status before 3 p.m. Beneath that, the reply, "No record of any patient under royal protocol or security clearance. No advance booking, no delivery logged." Confirming again, no such admission today. Lady Colin Campbell stared at the words, frozen. If real, these weren't rumors. They were records, digital fingerprints proving that the hospital the world assumed had hosted the royal birth never did. She printed them immediately, marking the timestamps, sender initials, and digital watermarks. Then she did what any investigator would do. She started verifying. She called 3 separate contacts: a former nurse she'd known since her days covering royal affairs, a friend in media IT, and a journalist who once worked the royal beat. All 3 looked at the metadata and said the same thing. The headers were consistent with an NHS internal system. This wasn't a hoax. One expert even told her, "The format, the routing, it's legitimate. The domain structure checks out. If someone faked this, they'd have to replicate the NHS backend. That's nearly impossible." It was like holding a bomb. But Lady C wasn't reckless. She sat with it for days, quietly piecing together what the emails implied. The palace had announced a birth, yet the hospital records didn't show it. Either Meghan gave birth somewhere else in total secrecy, or the palace had staged the entire event. She couldn't decide which was worse. And here's the part that nobody saw coming. The email thread didn't stop there. One more screenshot, timestamped the same day, later that afternoon, revealed a follow-up message from the hospital's PR department. Please note, we have received multiple media calls regarding the alleged royal birth. No corresponding patient information available. Refer all inquiries to Palace Comms. Do not engage further. That line hit her like a punch. Refer all inquiries to Palace Comms. That meant the hospital wasn't running the story. The palace was. Lady Colin Campbell leaned back in her chair, thinking of how this could possibly make sense. For decades, the monarchy had followed a careful system for royal births, witnessed, recorded, authenticated. Suddenly, in Meghan's case, everything was outsourced to the palace's word alone. It wasn't a coincidence. It was choreography. The next morning, Lady C began her own quiet investigation. She contacted another insider, a senior midwife she'd once met at a charity gala years earlier. The woman, nervous but sympathetic, agreed to meet in a discreet location in London. Over tea in a dimly lit cafe, Lady C slid the printed emails across the table. The woman's face went pale. "These look real," she whispered. "This format, that's how we logged admissions." "Then you understand what this means," Lady C replied. The midwife nodded slowly. "If there's no record of her, she didn't give birth here. And if she didn't give birth here, the palace misled the world." But the midwife didn't stop there. She added something else, something that made Lady C's blood run cold. "Do you know what's strange?" she said. "That week, several of us were told not to speak to journalists about any royal-related matters. It came from above. We thought it was just routine security. But now, I wonder." A chill went down Lady C's spine. The more she asked, the clearer the pattern became. Every staff member connected to potential maternity facilities in Windsor or London had received similar gag orders that week. All of them were told to direct questions to the palace. None of them had seen Meghan or Harry in person. And then, days later, the palace announced Archie's birth. That was when Lady C realized this wasn't just about one hospital. It was bigger, an orchestrated cover-up designed to erase every trace of Meghan's supposed delivery. Now, here's where things got even stranger. In the following weeks, while Lady C debated whether to go public, something unsettling happened. She received another anonymous message. This one wasn't friendly. It read, "Drop it, Lady C. You don't know who you're dealing with." No name, no return address, just that one line. She laughed at first. She'd been threatened before. But the timing, just after she began verifying the documents, was too convenient to ignore. And then, the media silence began to make sense. Why reporters never asked about the hospital? Why no doctor stepped forward to confirm attending the royal birth? Why the palace never released a birth certificate until weeks later? And even then, with inconsistencies in signatures and format. Because there was nothing to confirm. And when she finally decided to show those emails publicly, she knew exactly what would happen. They'd call her crazy. They'd call it fake. But the truth had a way of surviving noise. And sure enough, when screenshots of those emails leaked online, independent tech experts began analyzing the metadata, and their conclusions echoed hers. The timestamps lined up. The routing matched the region near Windsor. The file names followed the same pattern used in internal NHS communication logs. If someone had faked these, they'd done it with resources that only the palace or the government could access. Which raised another question. What if these weren't leaks? What if they were signals, subtle warnings from inside the system, sent to people like Lady C who the insiders knew would actually speak? By now, the story had escaped into the wild. Every major outlet wanted to know, were these emails real? Was Meghan's pregnancy staged? And while Lady C remained firm, she wasn't reckless. "I don't claim to know every detail," she said in an interview. "But I know what's missing, and that's Meghan Markle's hospital record." Meanwhile, the palace continued to maintain complete silence. No denials, no clarifications, just that same polished calm they'd perfected over generations of scandal control. But behind that calm, insiders whispered that the communications team had gone into crisis mode. Meetings were called, lawyers were consulted, and yet, no public statement was ever released. Because the moment they acknowledged the leaks, they'd validate them. So they waited. And while they waited, the world watched Lady C. They called her fearless. They called her ruthless. But above all, they called her dangerous. Because she had something the palace didn't, evidence. And when she finally described what those emails said in full, even her supporters were shocked. The third screenshot, the one she'd held back until her televised appearance, contained a message marked internal use only. It was from a department head, responding to inquiries from royal security. The first rule of royal documentation is simple: nothing vanishes. Every event, from a ribbon cutting to a royal birth, is recorded, signed, stamped, and sealed. There's an entire department inside the palace whose only job is to archive every certificate, every registration, every line of ink that proves the monarchy's continuity. That's why, when Lady Colin Campbell turned her attention from the hospital emails to the official birth record, she expected at least that piece of evidence to exist beyond dispute. It didn't. The United Kingdom's registry system is mechanical, efficient, and very public. Within days of any birth, an entry appears in the General Register Office: name of child, parents, location, attending official. Royal births have an added layer of ceremony. The record is hand-signed by witnesses and sometimes displayed briefly outside Buckingham Palace in a gilded frame. The tradition stretches back centuries, a symbol of transparency between crown and country. But in Archie's case, there was a void. For weeks after the announcement, no record appeared. Reporters searched the public database. Nothing. When the certificate finally surfaced nearly a month later, it didn't come through the usual registry release. It was quietly slipped into the system, almost like an afterthought. No royal proclamation, no public unveiling. And the details? Confusing, inconsistent, even amateurish. Lady C studied that certificate like a detective examining a ransom note. Something was wrong immediately. The handwriting, blocky, uneven, didn't match the elegant penmanship of previous royal documents. The registrar's signature was smudged, as if written in haste. More curious still, Meghan's place of birth was listed as Rachel Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. But the space where the hospital name should have appeared? Blank. Not private residence. Not Frogmore Cottage. Just a dash. That's not a clerical quirk. That's an omission. Lady C remembered the stories from the Diana years, how palace staff once staged photos to keep reporters from discovering medical details. But this was different. It wasn't privacy. It was erasure. She compared the certificate to Prince Louis's from 2018. Kate's document clearly named the Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital, listed both attending doctors, and bore the royal registrar's full signature. Archie's, by contrast, looked like something prepared by someone guessing what it ought to say. The date of registration raised more questions. According to law, births must be recorded within 42 days in England. Archie's fell on the outer edge of that limit. Almost late. Almost as though someone waited until the last possible day, perhaps to decide what to write, or what not to. Why delay something so routine? Lady Colin Campbell reached out to contacts inside the General Register Office. One clerk, speaking anonymously, said the document came through an unusual channel. Instead of arriving via standard hospital confirmation, it was submitted directly by royal representatives. When pressed, the clerk admitted that was highly irregular, but declined to say more. So Lady C dug deeper. Through another source, a friend of a friend who'd once handled royal correspondences, she obtained copies of draft registry logs for early May 2019. Buried among hundreds of names, there was a gap in the sequence of registration numbers. An entire range skipped. Usually, missing numbers mean administrative errors. But here, the missing range aligned exactly with the week of Archie's alleged birth. Coincidence? Or cleanup? Meanwhile, journalists who had once been wary of the topic began sniffing around again. One veteran reporter admitted off-record that the palace had requested a media freeze on any inquiries about the certificate until it was finalized. That alone was extraordinary. The monarchy can ask, but it rarely demands. Yet this time, the order had come from the very top. It wasn't just the missing hospital name that bothered Lady C. It was the way the document seemed to evolve. An early version leaked online listed Meghan as Princess of the United Kingdom. Days later, the certificate in the official archive no longer carried that title. The entry had been modified, quietly, with no public explanation. Who edits a royal birth record? And why? The palace issued a statement after the discrepancy surfaced. The changes were made to reflect the mother's correct style and titles. The explanation sounded polite, bureaucratic, and hollow. Lady C called it utter nonsense. She knew how those documents were handled. Any alteration required a formal request to the Home Office and left an administrative trail. But when she tried to track that paperwork, it was nowhere to be found. No request form, no authorizing letter, no record at all. For Lady C, this was the moment the pattern snapped into focus. The missing hospital admission, the vague announcement, and now a birth certificate that looked like it had been stitched together at the last minute. Every piece pointed to one conclusion. The palace was fabricating a timeline. She laid the papers across her desk, comparing handwriting, ink density, and registry numbering. Even to an untrained eye, the inconsistencies were glaring. The registrar's signature and sin field seemed to tilt upward unnaturally, as though traced over. The date stamp was darker than the surrounding ink, possibly reapplied. And the registration district, Westminster, didn't align with the address listed for Frogmore Cottage, which fell under Windsor. If Meghan had given birth privately at home, the document should have been registered in Windsor. If she'd delivered in London, the hospital would have been named. But neither applied. So what was this? A placeholder? A prop? The more she examined it, the more Lady C realized how carefully every inconsistency worked to obscure one simple fact: location. The entire scandal hinged on that single missing word. Without it, no one could verify anything. She couldn't help but wonder who filled out the form. The handwriting wasn't Meghan's. The signature, oddly placed, didn't resemble her autograph on other documents. Some experts claimed it looked like a clerk's attempt to copy her style. Others noticed that Harry's signature appeared unusually short, almost forced, as if done quickly. Was the couple even present when it was filed? A retired registrar contacted by Lady C offered an unsettling theory. If they didn't want scrutiny, she said, they could have sent an assistant with delegated authority. It's allowed under royal protocol, though rarely used. But in that case, there should be a separate authorization form. If that's missing too, someone wanted no trail at all. Each discovery tightened the noose. The official record wasn't proof of a birth, it was proof of an absence. Then came another blow. Through a Freedom of Information request submitted by an independent journalist, it was confirmed that no birth announcement had been logged by any hospital in Windsor, Berkshire, or London corresponding to Meghan's supposed labor. In every case, the reply was identical. No information held. Lady C almost laughed when she read that phrase. It was bureaucratic language for "we know nothing." She began connecting dots between the emails she'd received earlier and this bureaucratic vacuum. The emails had shown that no royal patient was admitted. The registry now showed that no hospital had recorded a birth. And yet the palace still produced a certificate. So, where did the details come from? At this point, she started hearing whispers from old acquaintances still orbiting the royal machine. One described frantic late-night meetings in May 2019 inside Clarence House. Another mentioned urgent document delivery runs to the Home Office. One even claimed that the Queen's private secretary was briefed on a sensitive registration issue involving the Sussexes. Whether those accounts were true or rumor, they fit the timeline. Still, Lady C wanted tangible evidence. She called a contact in Parliament, someone sympathetic to her investigations. He couldn't provide files, but he offered something else: confirmation that an internal audit had once flagged irregularities in late-submitted birth registrations linked to royal households. He didn't name names, but the implication was clear. That same night, Lady C wrote in her journal, "If this were any other family, the record would be void. But this is the Crown, and the Crown rewrites its own paperwork." Her discovery reached the press in fragments. Some outlets mocked her. Others cautiously repeated the inconsistencies, careful to frame them as odd coincidences. But once the online forums got hold of the registry copy, ordinary people began noticing the same irregularities she had. Amateur analysts compared font spacing, ink weight, and alignment, posting side-by-side images of Archie's certificate and those of other royal babies. The visual differences were impossible to ignore. The palace remained silent. Meanwhile, an unexpected voice entered the conversation. A former Home Office employee who had processed documents for royal events. He reached out to a journalist under the pseudonym Edward. He said, "In 2019, there was confusion over one royal birth record. It came through late and signed, then was returned with altered fields. That's not standard procedure." When asked which royal it concerned, He refused to answer directly, only adding, "The correction request originated from an address in Windsor." That was enough. Lady C knew the puzzle was nearly complete. The missing hospital record had evolved into a missing registration, and now she had a pattern of edits that suggested coordination at a governmental level. She didn't say it aloud, but the implication haunted her. The monarchy had used its influence to manufacture a paper trail for a birth that might never have happened. The pressure around her investigation intensified. Anonymous calls, warnings, a car that seemed to follow her for 3 consecutive days. She refused to be intimidated. "If they're watching," she told a friend, "it means I'm getting close." And then, late one evening, another envelope arrived at Castle Goring. This time, physical. No return address, just her name written in neat, looping handwriting. Inside, she found a photocopy of what appeared to be a draft version of the birth certificate, identical to the official one except for a single handwritten note in the margin. "Check revision, initials mismatch." No one ever determined where it came from. To Lady C, that scribble proved what she'd suspected all along. Someone inside the system had questioned the document's authenticity before it was finalized. That small, almost invisible protest had been buried under layers of royal protocol. Now, with the certificate's inconsistencies public and the hospital records non-existent, Lady Colin Campbell prepared to make her next move. She'd shown the world missing names, blank spaces, and silent institutions. The next step was obvious: expose who orchestrated it. Because if every paper trail ends in fog, then somewhere behind the fog stands the person who designed it. And when Lady C began tracing signatures and cross-checking initials, one name surfaced again and again: a senior palace aide who'd managed communications for both the Queen and Prince Charles. A man known for discretion and damage control. He was the one who had supposedly handled the registration details. And according to whispers inside Buckingham Palace, he was also the man who'd given the order that no hospital should ever be named. Lady Colin Campbell wrote his initials in her notebook and circled them 3 times. The next chapter of her investigation wouldn't just deal with paperwork. It would dive into deliberate orchestration, the human hands behind the deception. Because documents can be forged, but orders leave echoes. And those echoes were starting to reach her doorstep. Something was coming. Something bigger than missing records, bigger than registry gaps. Something that would expose how the palace itself became part of the fabrication. And when Lady C uncovered that link, even she admitted she was afraid. Because this time, the trail didn't lead to hospitals or clerks. It led straight into the royal household. And what she would find there would send the entire monarchy into quiet, calculated panic. Imagine being told the Duchess of Sussex gave birth in total privacy, away from cameras, and prying eyes. Now imagine being told that story repeatedly, from palace press releases to celebrity interviews, only to discover that no hospital record exists to back it up. For months after the alleged birth of Archie Harrison, this became the official explanation: a home birth. But as Lady Colin Campbell would later uncover, the home birth narrative may have been nothing more than a diversion, designed to distract the world while hiding the truth in plain sight. It all began with subtle inconsistencies in Meghan's appearances leading up to May 6, 2019. During her final weeks of pregnancy, Meghan's public outings were carefully staged, a mix of long coats, flowing dresses, and strategically placed handbags. For those watching closely, something didn't add up. Some observers noted sudden shifts in the size and shape of her baby bump, as if she were wearing padding or prosthetics. Others noticed wardrobe changes that seemed oddly calculated. In some appearances, she appeared rounder, fuller. In others, she looked slimmer, as though time had compressed. Lady Colin Campbell, who had been tracking royal pregnancies for decades, immediately spotted the inconsistencies. She compared photographs from multiple events, noting that the angles and lighting seemed too perfect, almost like a director was crafting a story for the cameras. "It wasn't natural," she said later in an interview. "It was controlled. It was calculated." And that's the first sign something was off. When the home birth narrative emerged, it fit neatly into this constructed image. It explained why Meghan wasn't seen in the hospital. It justified the missing documentation. It offered an air of modernity, portraying her as a duchess who dared to break tradition for the sake of privacy. But it also raised a series of logistical and medical questions. A home birth isn't just about labor. It involves a team, midwives, emergency protocols, sometimes doctors. Medical supplies must be ready. Plans must be in place for rapid hospital transfer in case complications arise. Yet none of this was confirmed publicly. Not a single nurse, midwife, or obstetrician ever spoke about being present at Meghan's supposed home delivery. Not one professional could verify that a birth took place. And when Lady Colin Campbell reached out to her contacts, she was met with consistent responses. The medical professionals on duty that day had no record of attending a royal patient at any location. That's when the diversion theory began to take shape. Lady C had long suspected that the palace might have used the home birth story as a smokescreen, a distraction to conceal the true events. A narrative that seemed plausible to the public, but left no verifiable evidence. In other words, the perfect cover for something far more elaborate. Then came the timeline problem. Public records indicated that the announcement of Archie's birth came almost immediately after the supposed labor. Meghan's labor, the palace said, began in the early morning. Within hours, the baby was delivered, swaddled, and photographed. Yet the time frames didn't match known medical norms. First-time mothers often spend several hours in active labor. Even experienced mothers rarely transition from early labor to post-delivery in such a compressed window without medical assistance. And yet, photographs of Meghan in Windsor later that day showed her standing, composed, in heels, holding a swaddled infant. No signs of exhaustion. No immediate postpartum recovery period. It was as if the labor had never happened at all. This was where Lady Colin Campbell's instincts kicked in. She began tracing the home birth narrative back to its origins, looking for clues about who first promoted the idea. Her research revealed that the explanation had been seeded strategically by palace communications weeks in advance. Statements emphasizing privacy, the couple's modern approach to childbirth, and their desire for minimal media exposure were all coordinated in a pattern that suggested a deliberate public relations strategy rather than a spontaneous choice. But why? Why would the palace go to such lengths to fabricate a narrative about a home birth? Lady C's theory was as simple as it was shocking. By promoting the home birth story, the palace created a shield of plausible deniability. They could claim privacy without producing evidence, all while maintaining control over the message. If questioned, the explanation was airtight. The Duchess chose to give birth at home. No one saw her, and that's that. The problem, of course, is that home births leave traces too. Midwives, emergency calls, deliveries logged in local health systems. In Archie's case, those traces were absent. Completely absent. The diversion theory gained more weight when Lady Colin Campbell examined Meghan's appearances in the days immediately following the alleged birth. Video footage, still photographs, and even casual paparazzi snaps revealed subtle but telling anomalies. The infant in the photographs sometimes appeared to change size and position between appearances. Blankets, clothing, and angles were carefully chosen to obscure facial features. The public only ever saw glimpses of the child, never a full view. Could this have been merely protective parenting? Possibly. But combined with missing records, missing staff testimonies, and an abrupt, unexplained announcement timeline, the evidence painted a more disturbing picture. Lady C also highlighted the behaviors of Harry during these appearances. While Meghan smiled and posed, Harry's body language was often tense, eyes scanning the crowd or looking off camera. To those trained in reading subtle cues, his behavior suggested unease or concern, as though he were maintaining the appearance of a family event that wasn't entirely real. Then there were the anecdotes that never made it to the public. Insiders who had once worked within royal security suggested that no medical team had been on standby near Frogmore Cottage on the morning of May 6th. The alleged home birth site was reportedly under light surveillance for privacy, but not at the level one would expect for a royal delivery. If complications arose, evacuation protocols would have been difficult, raising serious safety concerns. All of these factors coalesced into a central question. Was the home birth story a legitimate choice, or a carefully orchestrated diversion? Lady Colin Campbell leaned heavily into the diversion theory in her interviews, emphasizing how the absence of evidence often speaks louder than the presence of it. She asked her audience directly, if the Duchess truly gave birth at home, why is there